Hello everybody, my name is Marcus and welcome back to Automation Game after a long break. Today I'm really excited to get into a new Let's Play with you guys. This time, something a little bit different than our previous start. A lot of the comments on my previous Let's Play suggested that next time maybe we should do something more luxury or performance oriented, so I thought that's what we would do this time. And it'll also give us an opportunity to do a different starting condition. I'm using the game's Insane preset, which basically gives us a small factory plot, 100 million bucks, and not much else, well, nothing else to be exact. And that's quite a bit different from the relatively easy start that we had last time with a medium factory, I think, on a large plot. We are going to make things a little bit easier for ourselves, however, by starting at Hetvasia, which gives us access to the big three car markets right from the start of the game, which we're going to need because I want to target GT cars in this playthrough, at least to start off with. And that's a relatively small market, and I think having access to that big three is going to be a boon for us. So let's dive right in and get started designing our first model. Create it from scratch, of course. Target the GT segment. Right, now in terms of body selection, I am thinking we'll go for this long coupe body here because the long wheelbase, it's going to make it heavier, it's also going to make it more stable, and I want this car to be fast. These should be performance cars. Now we're bottlenecked by our small factory, or not bottlenecked, but rather limited to choosing aluminum here because we can't put in the steel presses. You need a medium factory for that, so we have to do the limited production option. Now, we could actually go for a body-on-frame here, a ladder chassis, and to be honest, that would probably be the optimal decision. But I don't know, I think the space frame would just be a little bit nicer, to be completely truthful, and I like the idea of it better. So already we are making some risky, suboptimal decisions, first of many to come. We are going to go for steel chassis material. I don't want to pay for the Galvy plant just yet. And then suspension, we'll do double wishbone because we want it to ride and handle as best as possible, and since we're already putting this much money into the chassis, it doesn't really make sense to cut corners over here. Pop a couple quality points in for good measure. One of the nice things about building in these small factories is that you're going to use very low automation, or rather we're going to use very low automation. Which means we can run the automation slider not very aggressively and put those points into other focus areas, or just have a shorter engineering time, which is nice. In terms of engines, we have a couple different choices here. To me, the two main ones would be an inline 6 or a V8. An inline 6 is going to be a little bit heavier, smoother, but also cheaper, which is quite nice. A V8 is more expensive, but a little bit lighter, but also not quite as smooth, but still pretty smooth. I think the V8 has a little bit more growing room and a little bit more headroom as an engine format or an engine layout to specialize in. We can scale it up a little bit bigger than we can a straight 6 and have it still be viable. Not that we're going to make a particularly big one now, and I guess we could always switch later. But I think the V8 is going to be our pick for this one here. Let's maybe pretty large. I'd like to do something maybe around the 3.8 liter mark. I mean, that's going to be kind of a corker, but that's okay. I want to make some power for this bad boy. Let's go for push rods. That should keep it light and compact for an engine of this displacement. Push rods are really nice on V-type engines because you only get one camshaft for 2 cylinder banks, which is really cool, and it makes the pushrod configuration even more attractive than it normally is on V-type engines. We'll just have to pop a couple quality points into it, which we can afford to get the engine to rev somewhat. So let's move right along to that. We're going to take a cross-plane style V8 because I don't think the revability advantage of, well, even if there was a revability advantage in automation right now, for flat plane V8s, it wouldn't be meaningful because we have push rods anyway, so that's what we're going to do. Cam profile, we'll start with a somewhat aggressive 45 to 45, and then we'll take the compression down. We'll start with 7.5 and then optimize from there. That should work. Now we have to work with these silly single barrel carbs here in the beginning because that's all we have. Let's start with a twin carb and see how that does. We'll spring for performance intake, but we'll keep it to regular fuel. We can run it kind of rich though, maybe a 13.8. I don't know, that should work. Ignition timing, take it down to 40, RPM optimized around 3,000. That should be pretty good, and then we will be doing well to get 5,000 RPM out of this engine, what with those push rods and not. Pop a quality point in. We'll start with short cast headers, dual exhaust, twin baffled mufflers. I would consider going over to tubular. Maybe it'll save a little weight. Actually, that saves quite a bit of weight. It looks like over 10 pounds. That's not bad at all. Over 20 pounds, in fact. So we'll actually stick with that. And then we definitely want some quality in our push rods. That actually works pretty well. We'll take the rest out of RPM. That looks pretty good, putting out just shy of 150 horsepower. And I think we can probably grab just one more click of compression. How's our exhaust tuning looking? Should these be smaller? Probably. Yeah. That's pretty good. Maybe one quality point there. Oh, we're actually somewhat bottlenecked on our carburetors. Maybe a triple carb is what we need. Let's try it. That gets us over the 150 horsepower mark, and it doesn't add all that much expense. I mean, I guess that is significant, but, you know, is that worth it, though, for, what is it? 4 horsepower? I think not. I think we stick with the twin carbs. Okay, anything else I want to do here? Maybe just a couple points of quality, make it a little smoother. Down here, how much production? Oh, that adds quite a bit of production units, so maybe not. Maybe we just live with 57. 57 smoothness is not too bad. It's no straight 6, but it'll get the job done. Okay, with this being our engine, let's go ahead and give it a test, see how it sounds. Sounds really good. It sounds a lot bigger than it is. You wouldn't think that sounds like a 3.8 liter engine. It sounds like a Chevy small block. Let's move right along. Now, we'll start with the coupe body. I do want to make a convertible to try and grab a little slice of some other demographics. Let's morph it a little bit. I want to bring these guys out. The fenders, that is, so we can put some more spacing on. And I want kind of a large cabin, because this should be kind of a big, comfortable car, I think. Okay, that looks good. We'll come back and I'll do the rest of the design like I have in the past through a time lapse after we're finished doing the rest of the design. So let's keep walking right along here. Rear wheel drive. We obviously don't need 4-wheel drive. Try and do a 4-speed. We'll take it up, wow, 146 mile an hour top speed. That's pretty darn fast for this early in the game. Let's give it sports tires, and we're gonna need bigger rims. 16 inches at least to fit the drum brakes to stop this. In the early game, before you have disc brakes, actually stopping either fast or heavy cars is a big problem, because you're limited to those crappy one-shoe drums. Let's space these out. If we make the wheels a little bigger, can I get slightly bigger tires? 145s would be nice. Yeah, that should work. Spaced out about like that, real nice. I can make the rears bigger than the fronts if need be, but we'll start by making them equal size and see if that's necessary. Drums, brakes as big as possible, of course. No under tray, just a little bit of cooling airflow. Now for interior, this is where we actually do have some interesting decisions. You know, the question is, do I want to go for a full-fledged 4-seater like this and have it be more comfortable? which I think would work better for the GT market specifically, or we could go for a 2+2 with the little kind of, janky 2 rear seats back here, which would be not as competitive in the GT market itself, but might allow it to compete in some other more broad markets. I'm going to start with the having 2 proper rear seats in the back, and we'll see how much that weighs, and we'll go from there. In terms of interior, we can choose, do we want a sport, a luxury, or a handmade? I think a luxury is going to be the ticket here, maybe with a premium radio. Well, we'll go back and we'll see if they like the luxury radio. Put a quality point in as well. Power steering, just, well, it's not power steering. There's none. But we'll put a few points of quality into the not power steering, because it should be needed. Advanced safety. And let's see how we're looking. Okay, not too far off, just without having done any tuning. Let's hit the normal button to soften the suspension up. We have quite a bit of oversteer. I think we are going to have to do unequal sized tires, but look how well we're scoring. Let's take a look at that. Okay. What can we do about this oversteer situation? Well, let's take these down to 135s. We don't even take it down. We can just take it down to 140s, and that works well enough right there. How's our braking situation? It's been better. A little bit of quality. I'm not sure there's too much we can do about that. I think that's as good as it's going to get. That's a little bit ugly, but I don't want to make the tires any smaller than 145s, or else we're going to run into some pretty serious wheel spin issues. We're having some issues with it as is. Take the spacing down as well. I mean, I could do smaller tires and go for some like ridiculously tall first gear, but as is, the first gear's a 211-1. It takes it up to 55 miles an hour, and we're struggling with wheel spin. Now you could argue maybe we made it too much power, but yeah, I want this car to be fast. 9.9 seconds, 0 to 60. That's pretty quick for back then. Car only weighs 2,500 pounds too. That's not too heavy. All right, what else do we want to do here? We actually don't have problems with brake fade. Oh, let's take a peek at this interior. Oh, they like the luxury better. Do they like the luxury radio? I don't want to do a handmade, I've decided, because it's going to reduce the production efficiency down even further. I don't want to do that. Do they like premium or do they like luxury? Well, the luxury adds a lot of expense, but it only nets them an extra like 3 points in score. I am actually going to keep the premium radio because I think that that's going to be better for our profit margins. So we'll do that, but we'll put an extra point of quality into it, which, whoa, that makes a big difference. What about even one more? Even a bigger difference. Wow. I think that's the ticket right there. I don't want to put more than that in, though, because our engineering time is getting up there little by little. Okay, this all looks good. Let's fine-tune the suspension, and then I think our first trim should be almost ready for its design. I want the suspension to be not too firm, but a little bit sportier than what we see here. Maybe about like that. I don't know. I find it's usually advantageous to have the dampers somewhat stiffer than the springs. And this is pretty balanced, leaning ever so slightly towards sportiness. And we'll have to take some sway bar stiffness out of it, because we have basically no roll angle. That looks pretty good. Roll angle of 6 is about what we're looking for. And then I actually think we want to dial. We'll see how the score responds, but I'd like to actually have it just a little bit more drivable and a little less sporty than this. So we'll take the rear camber up to, I don't know, 1.5. That looks pretty darn good. And then for good measure, we'll just drop 1 point of quality into the suspension as well. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that so far. Let's have a look at the market scores. Scoring well in GT, GT Premium, and Sport. We'll have to get a better idea of what the scores are after we take it through the whole production and factory setup and everything like that. But so far, we're looking good. Let's go back. I'm going to do the naming, the design of it, and then I think I'm going to clone it and we'll make a convertible trim real quick just to try and sell a few more models. I'll be right back with you guys in a few minutes. And we're back with the completed design for what I've decided to call the Dragonfly, powered by the Potomac 3.8 V8. I actually think this is a pretty nice looking design. Happy with the way it turned out for a quickie. Just like before, our aim here is not to make the most beautiful cars in the world. These aren't going to be works of art, but just to get a little bit of buy-in and have them feel a little bit more real. So let's go ahead. I'm pretty happy with the way that one turned out, though. I'm going to run it around the test track real quick, and let's see how fast it'll go around. Really nice weight distribution, actually, for the time. It certainly sounds nice. It gets around in a 2-minute 50, which is really not all that fast. It's not all that slow, but it's not all that fast, but that's okay. We'll just gonna go with it for now because it seems like we have good scores. Before we put it into production, I am gonna clone it, and we're gonna swap over to this soft top trim right here. Looking very, very nice indeed. Maybe we could, can I modify that to be a little less weird? Oh, I gotta do something about this handle here, don't I? And we'll come back to that in a second. It needs just a little bit shorter gearing. We will target the convertible sports segment since that seems to be our best bet. I don't think we need to make any changes here. Brakes are what they are, unfortunately. I think we want a manual soft top instead of a detachable. That'll be a little bit better. This stays the same. Suspension, actually, not that big of a difference in weight, luckily. Well, 300 pounds, but the suspension tuning, well, I'm kind of okay with it being more comfortable as a convertible, but then again, we're targeting the sports segment. What would it look like if I just took each of those up a click? Yeah, that looks a little better. I think that's more what I want. All right. This is going to be the CV convertible 46. Same exact engine. We don't need a different variant for this. That looks good, and we're going to go ahead and sign that bad boy off. All right, now here we are in the factory setup where things get a little bit interesting due to our starting conditions. We can only build a small, and I think what I'm going to do is actually just go right out for it and build a small 3 factory. In the other insane starts I've done, I haven't had too much difficulty filling the demand or using up that 430 unit capacity, but we'll see how it goes because things have been updated a little bit since then. The total building cost, $16.5 million, quite reasonable, I think. 75% production efficiency, we'll just have to deal with it. Now this is where things get nice. We're going to take the automation right down to 30. See how much that helps the efficiency? Should we even take it down a little bit more to like 25? I think we should. Tooling quality we'll leave as is. We're going to pay our workers a little bit more, maybe 15%, because we're losing a lot to quality control here. So we want them to gain some experience relatively quickly. We are going to take our quality threshold down just a little bit. I don't want to chop off quite that much volume underneath this curve. The more volume underneath this curve, or rather these 3 curves that you're chopping off, that's the more money you're losing. Well, if you don't take into account things like recalls and damage to reputation, of course. So you have to run a sort of balance here. Let's complete the design. One of the new things that was introduced into Light Campaign 4.1 is for your first trim, you now get a 36-month reduction in your engineering time, which is really, really convenient and really, really nice, and helps you get that first model out a lot sooner. Tooling, we're going to take it right down to 25 to match the 25% that is in our factory setup. Sorry. And we're going to take the rest. I think a 36-month would work well here. Have the car come out in 1949. I don't want to put too much more funding in it because we are strapped for cash, but we'll take it up to about a 65. We'll take pressure down to 40 because the familiarity is really going to help us out. And, wow, we actually might be able to get this out in even 24 months. Let's see if we can do that. I don't want to take too much off the reliability slider, even though it's not all that important for the segments we're going for now. I don't want to tank our reputation too badly. And then actually right there, we could get this thing out the door in 24 months. That'd be really, really nice. Let's see if we can do the same for the engine. Now, of course, we don't start with a plot or a factory for the engine setup, so we're going to have to buy one. Luckily, plots are pretty cheap right now. Only about 800K for a small plot, which is all we need to build, to supply our small factory. And I actually think we could probably get away with, we'll see, but I think we could probably get away with a small 2 to supply the small 3 car factory, and we'll save $1 that way. But it's also worth looking, what's the price difference between this two? Well, it's only about 16 million. Yes, even less, more like 15, 14 million. It's all the same, let's see if we can save a penny and go with a small 2 and know that we can take a small 3 if we need to. Automation, same thing, all the way down. We might actually run this one at automation 30 instead of automation 25 because there's no limited production for the engine, so that's kind of okay. Same thing for the wages though, 15%, and take a little bit out of the QA threshold. Engineering management, same treatment here. Try to target that 24-month figure. It looks like we shouldn't have too much difficulty doing that. And we can actually even optimize it a little bit more. 646, that should be enough to supply it. Leave the reliability at 50. Yeah, that should work really well. And yeah, we have plenty of production capacity. Makes me wonder if we could even maybe do a small 1 factory. Let's try it. Not quite. Small 2 it is. We'll probably grow into it. Engines tend to get a little bit more expensive as the game goes on in terms of production units. Okay, this is all looking good. I think we're about ready to go to the last step and where we get into the biggest change from previous versions of the automation campaign, and that's the new sales model. So whereas before the game effectively worked on what was a direct-to-consumer model where you would sell a markup determined by the game based on how desirable your car was to the market, in this new campaign you have a dealership network and you sell your cars at a fixed price to the dealership network, and then the dealership takes a markup on top of that for the final sale price to the consumer. How much of a markup you let the dealership take determines how happy it is and how fast the dealership network grows, among other things. So it's a little bit of a trade-off here. What are the budgets of the demographics, and how do we price them so that we make a profit, the dealer has room to make a profit, and it's affordable for the target consumer? So our GT budget right now, median budget, is about $31,000 plus or minus 10K. So if we price this at maybe, let's type in 25K and see how that looks. The 32% markup. The forecasters are always ugly here in the beginning and for most of the game. I'll be completely honest. I don't really understand how to operate these sliders in regards to this forecaster all that well. What happens if I then match this one to a similar price? Neither one good. Let's try a little bit cheaper. Well, I don't want to go too much cheaper than that. I was having some problems in earlier playthroughs with orders piling up, so I don't know. We'll try this, and we can adjust the price once the cars hit the market to better suit our needs. So let's go ahead and sign these bad boys off and see how everything goes, all right? And we actually are just within budget here, so we don't even need to take a loan, which is really, really nice. And the only other thing that we're going to do before I unpause the game and see how our product lands in the market is just invest a little bit into marketing. So I'm going to put 1 point into sportiness, and I'm going to put 1 point into prestige, and that should be enough to get us going. And this is also going to be pretty affordable as well. We'll do more as the game goes on, but I don't want to spend a ton of money marketing just yet. All right, let's unpause the game, and I'll see you guys in a minute, and we'll see how the new trim hits the market and see how people react. I just want to pause here for one moment before the trim goes on sale to point out one of the new features here, that you'll actually pre-sell models before the car hits the market, which is really helpful in getting a little bit of revenue before, because they make a 10% deposit on it by default before the car actually starts going into production. So we're about 6 months out here, and we're already negative 2 months of stock of our main model. So we might have to hike prices. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, here we are. Our first model is in production, selling quite nicely. We probably will have to raise our prices just a little bit. I'm going to pause the game here. And we're in 1948. We should be starting our new facelift soon. Before we do, let's take a quick look at the tech pool here and see if there's anything worth even waiting for. The only potential thing would be two-shoe drums, but I bet you we can facelift in, or maybe advanced 50 safety. Well, maybe since we're profitable, what we'll do next episode is rush a couple of these little techs here, and then maybe like mid 49 we can introduce a quick facelift, have that out by like 52, 53. That would work out pretty well, and then that would time it well for us to get, you know, some of these nice mid 50s technologies. And yeah, we will, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, this is going to wrap up the automation portion of today's episode. We introduced our first model. It's selling profitably. I am really happy with where we're going so far, so I'm going to export just the GT model into BeamNG Drive. We'll take it for a spin, and I'll see you guys over there in just a minute. We're back in BeamNG. We're going to take our new Dragonfly for a spin here and see how it feels out here on the track. I think it's a very pretty car. And it should be pretty fun to drive. Well, with about 150 horsepower, this would have been a fast car for the day. Let's see how it is. Starts off with some wheel spin. Oh, that is a sharp, tall first gear. And floated into the corner here. Love how undertired the early game automation cars are. Actually makes them kind of fun to drive. Certainly sounds very nice, and actually, I'm pretty happy with the handling so far. Fairly well-balanced car and pretty controllable. It doesn't feel all that fast by, certainly not by modern standards, but I don't know. I think for the time it would have been pretty quick, if not necessarily one of the most agile cars out there. It's definitely a little bit of a boat, but it's a controllable boat. and actually pretty fun to drive. Oh, might have overcooked that just a little bit. Let's see how the top speed is here coming down the straightaway. You can definitely tell that this is a car that would have been meant to cruise at steady state, high speeds, not necessarily a track toy car. It's not all that nimble, even though it does handle reasonably well. Very, very stable at speed, I have to say. Taking that corner 110 miles an hour, the car felt great. I'm going to have to brake well in advance for that corner. Kick it down even one more gear. I might have braked a little early there. And let's see if we can slide it through this corner. A little sloppy, but we made it through. I'm actually really, really happy with the way that this car turned out overall. It's a lot of fun to drive, it's pretty quick, and I think it looks pretty nice as well. And so far, it's a sales success in our campaign, so it checks all the boxes for me. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Sorry about the long hiatus, but I'm super happy to be back with you guys, making another Let's Play series. Very, very curious and interested to see any feedback you guys have or any ideas that you'd like to see. We are a little bit limited in terms of our production capacity right now in campaign, but I think we should be expanding that pretty soon. I'll see you guys next time. As always, thank you so much for watching. Bye! Let's see how it handles the S's down here, this little slalom portion. And brake it late. Whoa! Okay, we didn't make it. This is actually a really, really pleasant car to drive. It kind of has the right amount of power.